Today is May 26th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, out of the core text of the Big Book, we are going to continue our journey through Into Action, pages 84 through 86. And out of the personal stories, we are going to conclude My Bottle, My Resentments, and Me, pages 442 through 445. And also conclude tradition number 5 out of the 12 and 12 by reading page 153 and 154. So with all that, my friends, hope you're all doing well this morning. Hey, it's another day we've been given, and it's up to us today who we decide to be. So let's go ahead and press on and get to the good stuff. All right, my friends. So we are finally at the, we're wrapping up step 9, and we are at these beautiful promises that come after step 9. Although I would argue that I've experienced some of these promises beginning with step 1 and 2 and 3, all the way up to and leading and including step 9. But here they are. You might have heard these before if you've been around the rooms, but I just love these. They never get old. So we're starting on the bottom of 83. Again, we're reading up to page 86. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do. For alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day that we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed His directions, we've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than us are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter. Yet we believe that we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised at how right the answers come after we've tried this for a while. All right, my friends, beautiful stuff right here. I can't wait to come back to this in just a minute. All right, so if you recall from yesterday's reading from My Bottle, My Resentments and Me, our friend here, he's definitely hit some hard times. Gets out of the military, his alcoholism is getting worse. He gets married, has a child, I think several children, as a matter of fact. I'm sure his alcoholism played a part in his divorce, probably a big part in his divorce, and that crushed him. And now he is living on his own, going from Skid Row to Skid Row. But eventually he meets this barmaid. He says, "Here I met a barmaid who drank like a fish and was as mean a woman as I'd ever seen. But she had a place to live, so I moved in, and thus began the romance of a lifetime." So we are going to finish this story today. So again, obviously the story's in here because there's hope in this man's life. So I'm anxious to see how this ends for our friend here. "I finally had a roof over my head, sheets, and food. All we did was drink and fight, but she worked at the bar, so it kept us going. With just enough cash for booze, we drank continuously for several months. Then, on my way to find a drink, I ran into one of my old hobo buddies, an older man. I remembered him as an excessive drinker and alcoholic. And here he was walking toward me down the street in a white shirt, tie, and suit, looking marvelous. With a big smile on his face, he told me that he quit drinking and how he managed to do it, and how much better he felt. My first thought was, if he can do that, I can do that, and much better because I'm only 33. He took me down to this club where there were some other recovered alcoholics. I drank coffee while they all told me how they had changed. It looked like they might have something here. If they could do this, maybe, just maybe, I could too. Their enthusiasm was catching. I began to feel excitement inside, but had no idea why. I rushed off to tell my new girlfriend about what had happened and how great it would be if we quit drinking. "You're nuts," she yelled at me. "You can just drag your rear back to your refrigerator car. I've got parties to go to." Although I seemed unable to transmit my excitement, I told her more. The next day, we both quit drinking. There are no words to explain why it happened or how it happened. It just did. It was a miracle. Every day that we were able to stay sober was another gift from a higher power that I had given up on many long years ago. The next year, we took a job managing a camp outside of town where drunks were sent to get dried out and sobered up. It was our responsibility to see that they had food and stayed out of trouble. Both tasks were almost impossible at times, but we kept trying. With some support from old-timers in AA, we lasted a year. This was a volunteer job and we had little money for ourselves. When the year was up, I went over to the list of drunks who had been through the place, 178 in all. I exclaimed to my partner, "Not a single one of them is sober today." "Yeah," she replied, "but you and I are." And so, on that happy note, we were then married. My sponsor told me if I wanted to form a relationship with my higher power, it would be necessary for me to change. At a meeting one night, a member said, "It's not how much you drink, it's what drinking does to you." That statement changed my whole attitude. Of course I had to surrender and accept that I was an alcoholic. I had a hard time giving up the anger at my ex-wife for taking my kids, at the man who murdered my mother, and at my father for what I felt was deserting me. But these resentments eased with time as I began to comprehend my own defects of character. I became acquainted with some monks who lived in a nearby monastery who listened to my story with some amazement and were able to help me understand myself. At the same time, my sponsor and other old-timers who had taken us under their wings loved us back to rejoin society. Gradually, the ice that was my heart melted and I changed as my relationship with my higher power grew. Life began to take on a whole new meaning. I made what amends were possible, but knew that I would have to return to my childhood home to clear up that part of my past. But we were busy with our own paid contracting company now, and as the years passed by, the opportunity to go back home just did not come. As the months following the day that we quit drinking had turned into years, I have become increasingly more devoted to this program that saved not only my life, but my wife's also. Eventually, I became involved in AA service and helped get a central office started for some of our groups. We both became active in general service and began traveling all over the state going to meetings. To my surprise, both of us were given the opportunity to serve as delegates to the General Service Conference. What a joy we found in this. One of my most memorable moments was when at the opening of the conference, the chairman of AA's General Service Board said, "We are all gathered here tonight, not as individuals, but for the betterment of Alcoholics Anonymous all over the world." The years flashed back to when I was on the grates outside that very hotel, frantically trying to keep from freezing. I was overwhelmed by God's grace just to be there. One day, a friend of mine who writes for a living asked if he could write the story of my life for a magazine. He assured me that there would be no anonymity problem, so I agreed. I had been sober for almost 25 years at this time and had no idea what God, as I understand him, was about to do for me. My oldest brother, the one who had taken me in, just happened to subscribe to this magazine and just happened to read the article. Thus began an amazing chain of events that altered not only our lives, but the lives of my family and many others. It is nothing short of a modern-day miracle. God has done for me what I could not do for myself. The article gave the name of the town that I live in, so after my brother and sister-in-law finished reading the story, they called directory assistance and phoned me. The first time we had spoken in more than 30 years. I burst into tears, and so did they. They told me that after my disappearance following the divorce, my family had tried repeatedly to locate me. They were concerned because someone had told them that I was either dead or left the country. I felt bad that I had worried them like that. But in my self-centeredness, it had simply never occurred to me that they cared that much. One by one, I talked to all my brothers and sisters in the next 24 hours. My brother gave me the phone number of my own daughter, whom I hadn't seen for 27 years. Then I called her. Next, I talked to both of my sons. Oh God, what an experience. I was so overwhelmed by all the memories and the lost years that it was difficult for me to even speak. I spent several weeks crying as all the old hurts rose to the surface and were healed. Later, we had a big family reunion back in my hometown. It was a happy day for all of us to be together for the first time since we were split up. My father had passed away, but all of his children were there with their families, a large and joyous crowd. Finally, after all those years wondering about my family, my higher power had acted through my friend to undo the tangled circumstances and allow me to make amends to the people who had been hurt by my bitterness. I believe that I am living proof of the AA saying, don't give up until the miracle happens. Wow. Oh man, I'm getting a little emotional reading this last part. Beautiful story. Incredible what God can do. The God of my understanding can do. It's just incredible. Here you've got a man who, years before, as it says on 444, the years flash back to when I was on the grates of the outside that very hotel, frantically trying to keep from freezing. Here's a man years before, right outside the hotel of the General Service Conference, freezing to death, consumed by alcoholism, and God has restored him to help so many people. And then here's a man too that just so happens to be included in the story in a magazine, and his brother happens to read that same magazine, that same story, and reach out to our friend here. And by another series of chains of events, the entire family is reunited, and he gets to make his direct amends 30 years later. What a story. What a God story. Oh, it's beautiful. And that last line, don't give up until the miracle happens. Wow. Oh, goosebumps. Goosebumps. What a great story. And just another example, an everyday example of how miracles still happen. All right, so we have one more thing to read, so let's just jump into that. All right, so we are in the 12 and 12 now, and we are in tradition number 5. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups, or AA as a whole. And we have gotten to a point where our friend here, most likely this is Bill, he is talking to another friend and as soon as he brings up spirituality, the friend bristles. And how many of us have probably reacted that way at times? So again, we're going to finish off this story and see how it ties back into tradition number 5. We're reading page 153 and 154. Thank heaven I came up with the right answer for that one. It was based foursquare on the single purpose of AA. You have faith, I said. Perhaps far deeper faith than mine. No doubt you're better taught in religious matters than I. So I can't tell you anything about religion. I don't even want to try. I'll bet too that you could give me a letter-perfect definition of humility. But from what you told me about yourself and your problems and how you propose to lick them, I think I know what's wrong. Okay, he said, give me the business. Well, said I think you're just a conceited Irishman who thinks he can run the whole show. This really rocked him. But as he calmed down, he began to listen while I tried to show him that humility was the main key to sobriety. Finally, he saw that I wasn't attempting to change his religious views, and that I wanted him to find the grace in his own religion that would aid his recovery. And from there on, we got along fine. Now, concludes the old-timer, suppose I've been obliged to talk to this man on religious grounds. Suppose my answer had to be that AA needed a lot of money, that AA went in for education, hospitals, and rehabilitation. Suppose I suggested that I take a hand in his domestic and business affairs. Where would we have wound up? No place, of course. Years later, this tough Irish customer would like to say, my sponsor sold me one idea, and that was sobriety. At the time, I couldn't have bought anything else. And that's what it's all about, guys. That right there. It's just one drunk trying to help another drunk. You know, AA is not a religion. In my experience, these recovery programs have just strengthened a relationship that I had with my higher power even beforehand, but in a much, much deeper way. I always say, AA for me has been God for Dummies. And don't get me wrong, I read another, they call it the Big Book. I read that daily. And it's so good for my soul to do that. But AA gives me practical steps to lead a more honest and humbled life, which I didn't really know how to do before. And in turn, say it's doing step 10. When I'm wrong, I have to promptly admit it. Learn from my mistakes. And then, clear the air right away if I can help it. Talk about humility. Having to confess these sins to another person that I trust. That'll humble me. And then step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation. To seek a conscious contact with God, so that to me it's praying and listening. I never knew how to listen before AA. And then finally, step 12. Practicing these principles in all of my affairs, which is a lifetime job right there, because I am a human being with many flaws. But also carrying the message to others, getting outside myself, helping others. Before the 12 steps, there was a lot of times I was so consumed in me, in a negative sense, but still self-centered. So we see here some practical advice. And then finally, going back to the Big Book, I know this episode is running very long, but there was so much good stuff today. The promises absolutely come true. They've come true in my life. And then right after that, you got the 10 step on pages 84 and 85, I believe it is, giving you step-by-step directions of what we can do throughout the day to live an honest, humble life. Exactly what to do in the morning, and then what to do throughout the day. And then when we get the next page tomorrow, what we do in the evening. It's so practical that for me, when I put these things into practice, when I actually do what those pages tell me to do, I feel so much better. Go figure, right? How often naturally do I not want to do these things? It's weird, right? And then I feel miserable. But when I actually do these things, even though that negative side of me saying, oh, just sleep in, or oh, you don't want to do that. When I actually do what those pages tell me to do, I feel better. Go figure. But anyways, guys, that's enough of my rambling for today. Thank you so much for joining me in this lifeboat of recovery. I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, any other sect, denomination, or religion. I am just a friend in this lifeboat of recovery. That's it. That loves these two books. And today's reading was particularly amazing for me, just to hear this. So, my friends, speaking of miracles earlier, if you are sober today, you are a miracle. I hope you're hearing me. You're a miracle. And those who love you, I'm sure, are very proud of you. Let's keep pressing on today. The only way we're going to get there is one day at a time, one moment at a time. So with all that, my friends, if we were given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.